wheel, the light bulb, the automobile, the refrigerator, personal computers, the internet, and the smartphone. What do all of these life-changing inventions have in common? Each is the product of innovation, a trait that has been the cornerstone of how our country has grown and blossomed into the world leader it is today. This same trait will be the cornerstone for years to come. Today, innovation is all around us, in agriculture, energy, transportation, and technology, especially here in Boston in the medical and life sciences industries. In late 2020, Jack Shields, BC High Class of 1979, funded the Shields Center for Innovation with a $5 million gift. Jack's vision was to build on the area's history of innovation, cultivating that spirit while teaching students the skills they need to be innovators of the future. All of which brings us here today, the inaugural event of the Shields Center for Innovation. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Grace Cotter-Regan, president of Boston College High School. Welcome to the first panel discussion held by the Shields Center for Innovation. Today's topic, why innovation matters in Boston and beyond. When you look at the recent news of Amazon's plan to bring 5,000 jobs to the seaport, and that Boston is one of 5 metro areas that have created more than 90% of the nation's innovation jobs in the last decade, it's clear that Massachusetts is a national leader. Over the last 6 years, Governor Baker's administration has been aggressive in making sure innovation flourishes here, which is why he says events like today are important to the Commonwealth and its future.
Good afternoon. This is Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker. I want to thank you for joining virtually today for this important discussion on innovation here in the Commonwealth, hosted by the Shields Center for Innovation at BC High. Massachusetts has a long, proud history of innovation. We led the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, and the Biotech Revolution. Today, Massachusetts continues to lead the way when it comes to innovation as the hub of the global life sciences industry and home of many of the world's most cutting-edge companies. As our reliance on technology only increases across virtually every space and place in personal life and in business, innovation will continue to be a critically important part of our economy, creating opportunities and high-paying jobs across the Commonwealth and the country. In addition to the economic benefits, innovation is critical to the development of technologies, therapies, and discoveries that can save lives, such as the COVID-19 vaccines, some of which were developed right here in Massachusetts. Making these discoveries requires bold, creative thinking, and often, it's young people thinking outside the box that drive that progress forward. That's why I was pleased to learn about the founding of the Shields Center for Innovation and look forward to its official launch. But what I'm really looking forward to are the innovations that students served by the center will create in the years ahead. I want to say thanks to Jack Shields for your vision and your gift to make this possible, and everyone at BC High for their support for the center. Today, I hope you enjoy this opportunity to hear from 3 individuals who've done so much to drive innovation here in the Commonwealth. And I hope that their experiences will inspire you to see what's possible for yourself as you consider a career in this exciting space. Thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you so much, Governor Baker, for your leadership and your presence with us today. We want to welcome our over 500 participants to the call today. To facilitate a lively and informed discussion, we've pulled together experts from around Boston who know a thing or two about innovation. Jack Shields, BC High Class of 1979, and founder and chairman of Shields Healthcare Solutions. Jack helped build and expand the family business, Shields MRI. However, he knew health networks would need specialty pharmacy services in the future, and so he put his innovation instincts to work. He started Shields Health Solutions in 2012, a company that has enjoyed rapid success. And now he's turning his attention to philanthropy. His gift to BC High was the second largest individual gift ever. And for that, we are extremely grateful. Thank you, Jack, and welcome. John Barrows from the BC High Class of 92 is also joining us. He is currently the Chief Economic Development Officer for the City of Boston. Before working for the city, John was the executive director of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, the largest urban community land trust in the country. He used his innovation to help revitalize neighborhoods, create community wealth, and produce permanent affordable housing. John, welcome. Also on our panel is Charbel Hebert, father of a student in the class of 2023 and Senior Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for Moderna. As you know, Moderna is the Cambridge-based biotech company that has utilized innovation to come up with a COVID vaccine. And that vaccine was produced in record time. Charbel, thanks for joining us. Moderna's vaccine in record time demonstrates the power of innovation, and that's what we're here to talk about. So let's begin our discussion. When we hear the word innovation, most of us think about a new idea, a new approach, or better, a way of doing things, a better way of doing things. So I'd like to ask the first question to Jack. And Jack, I'd like to ask you, what does innovation mean to you, and how have you utilized it in your career?
Thanks, Grace. Thank you very much. Innovation to me, simple answer. It's a team sport. It's for curious people. It's for gritty people. It's people have, grit and no quit. It's people who love, we're kind and compassionate. Why? Can't be a good teammate. You can't be in healthcare if you're not kind and compassionate. So that's what. And if you don't remember that, remember, fake it till you make it. And then honestly, I think I learned everything I needed for innovation at BC High. Against my will, I was dropped on Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester, but it opened up the greatest sandbox in the world to me. In healthcare, it is the epicenter of healthcare innovation. And I became curious at that time, and I haven't stopped. And I today still work with my teammates from BCI, classmates, teammates like Leo Smith, classmates like Peter Dolan, and it's wonderful. So I love innovation. So, and I've used it. All I've done, Grace, is take teams and applied it to radiology, oncology, and specialty pharmacy. And it's the great teams that make it. Not just the idea is worthless without great teams.
Jack, you mentioned something to me earlier about pattern recognition and teamwork. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, pattern recognition, teamwork. What I don't get, and one of the reasons big reason I'm excited about this is, if you had a gifted child who was musically inclined or, academically inclined at early age or athletically, you would start training them and scrimmaging them and iterating right away. But we don't do that. We wait till someone turns 30 or 40, finds out that they're really not passionate about what they like, and then they try to reorient themselves. Kind of difficult. So in the kids have that zeal, that tenacity, that curiosity. And so I think we should be training kids younger to recognize patterns because, business, you're going to, it's iterating. It's not failure, it's iterating. So do it early and do it often.
That's great. John, we don't often associate innovation with economic development or wealth creation, but it certainly plays a role in both, doesn't it? So talk about that for a minute. We'd also like to hear what innovation means to you personally.
Thanks, Grace. First, I just want to, thank Jack for this amazing opportunity. Jack, I've got 3 sons, and you just upped the ante. They're now going to study a little harder to make sure they all go to BCI. This is an incredible opportunity, and Grace, for your leadership at BCI. Charbel, great to be with you on this panel, and you guys are doing amazing work. So I'll start with what innovation means personally. And, I think in many ways, innovation is what BCI is about. Right? Innovation is about solving problems, right? It's about being a man or a woman or a person for others and trying to make sure that we're using the best of what we have, our talent, our resources to solve big problems. And that's why, the Boston area continues to be a very innovative ecosystem. Our life science and healthcare industry, the largest industry in our city, with over 145,000 jobs, is a thriving industry, thriving innovation sector. And the Greater Boston Life Science Corridor is the world's largest hub of life science companies, over 1,000 companies in this sector in Boston alone. The Boston metro area has more square footage of market labs amongst life science sectors in all of the country. So Boston is home to 18 hospitals, including 14 world-class teaching hospitals and 22 community centers. You can't beat that kind of ecosystem, which is why two of the major COVID-19 vaccine candidates have come out of the Boston life science community. So I'm really excited to be here with Moderna. So we've got a lot going on here. And Grace, your question about innovation and what it means for economic development and wealth creation, it means jobs, right? It means Boston has seen 15.8 million square feet of new developments approved last year alone, record setting. It's $8.5 billion worth of new development. And at the core of that is the growth in our innovation economy, particularly led by the life science sector.
That's great. Charbel, moving on, we mentioned earlier that the COVID-19 vaccine that Moderna created was one of the fastest ever produced. And congratulations, by the way. This is a perfect example of innovation. Talk about the steps that your company took to make this vaccine a reality and what innovation means to you and Moderna.
Yeah, thank you very much, Grace, for the question. But before I start, I also would like to thank BCI, thank Jack, for this opportunity to engage on innovation, which is, as you can imagine, it's a topic I'm very passionate about. Yeah, it's especially in healthcare. And also, John, it's great to be on this panel with you. Actually, I would like to follow on something that John said, about the Boston ecosystem. Yeah. When you think, why Boston? Why is Boston a hub for innovation and healthcare? Yeah, at least for healthcare. I mean, you can think of colleges, universities, right? You can think of the geographic density. You think of the talent magnet. But something really important in the pharmaceutical world is now most of the growth in pharma is happening through these mergers and acquisitions, and partnerships with smaller startups and biotechs, And I want to thank John, right, and the Boston area for creating this ecosystem that is, conducive, that fosters this proliferation, of all these startup and biotechs that are the hub for innovation. So thanks, John. Going to Moderna, right? I mean, if we, reflect on what happened, this past year, with the COVID pandemic, and you look at where the solutions came from, right? They did not come from big pharma, right? I mean, from the established leaders in vaccine manufacturers, right? They came from a small company like Moderna and a small company in Germany called BioNTech, right? These smaller innovative companies, provided these solutions to this major pandemic, right, and major public health crisis. And I'd be happy to share with you some perspective, on this, how the vaccine was developed, like you said, Grace, in a record time, right? But before, I thought I don't know if we can do it now or later, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page to describe what does mRNA vaccine means. What does it mean? What does it look like, right? Because there's some confusion or there's not a lot of familiarity with what it is, right? And it's a very simple concept. It's a very simple concept, which is based on the idea of having a messenger RNA, which is a chain of some molecules, and these molecules contain information, right? So we are giving our systems, our bodies, the recipe. The same way we cook. The software, the information on how to make our own vaccine and our own medicine, right? So we would take this mRNA molecule, we put it inside some lipids, some cholesterol, right? And we inject it into the body. Our systems, our body take these instructions, the recipe, and they will make what's so-called the spike protein, And this spike protein is a protein, is a little piece on the virus's capsid, on the virus that protrudes from the virus, right? So we're just making only the spike, And once the system makes the spike, our body recognizes that this is a foreign body, right? And they develop these neutralizing antibodies to block it, right? So next time the system is exposed to the actual virus, they have already this armamentarium to block the virus and from causing disease. Yeah. So this is a simple concept, and it's very disruptive, right? Asking our body to make our own medicine and own vaccines. So it's very disruptive in terms of innovation. So in terms of timeline, I'm sorry I'm taking a long time to just explain this, but in terms of timelines, only 2 days after the Chinese authority, they shared the genetic sequence of that virus. Only 2 days, we were able, Moderna, was able to develop the sequence, this mRNA. Only 2 days. Yeah. In 42 days from this sequence identification, we're able to release the batches, release this vaccine and send it to the NIH to start their phase 1 study to test the vaccine in humans. Yeah. And this happened in March. In May, we already started, we had some results. We saw that this vaccine is working and has the potential, to neutralize the virus. Yeah. So this was in May. In July, we started a 30,000 subject study, to assess whether this vaccine is safe and it works, right? We got some results, some preliminary results in October, November. At the end of November, we submitted our data to the FDA and other health agencies to show that this vaccine is safe and it works. And we got the authorization on December 18th, which is, again, like you can imagine, this was a world record. And I will stop here and then maybe wait later on for a question.
It's just remarkable. Remarkable. Thank you for all your work with the vaccine and for the rollout. Jack, you've also been involved with the fight against COVID. What are some of the innovative approaches or changes that Shields Health Solutions has made to help patients during this difficult time?
Thanks, Grace. So we're in the specialty pharmacy business. We're in the business of providing these complex drug regimens to the patients that need it most. And we're at 60 academic medical centers, 700 hospitals across the country. When this hit, they were the most anxious of the anxious because they have comorbidities. They were right in the front. They didn't know where to go. Getting information was brutal. We had a team approach, no surprise, a team and integrated approach opposed to a fractured approach that, let's say, some large organizations had. But we turned our whole entire organization, pharmacists, pharmacy techs that are in these clinics around the country, and we basically turned ourselves into counselors, support. I mean, we took food to them. A lot of our patients were shut in, out of fear. It was horrible. we're in city like New York is this thing, and all the major hospitals in New York City is this thing, as they brought in as this started to emerge. So, it's all about kindness, taking care of others. And I feel privileged to be able to at least play our small role in it. But again, it was all teamwork and it was all people cared. People, really leaned in and they cared about the people. That's all.
It's beautiful. Thank you. John, to make innovation a reality, you need an ecosystem with research universities, venture capitalists, companies on the cutting edge, and a supportive government. And it seems like we're well suited to grow innovation right here in Boston and the Commonwealth. Can you talk about your work with the city and the relationships and partnerships, and also the role that the government plays in innovation?
Yeah, absolutely, Grace. Thanks for the question. That ecosystem is fueled, as you said, by, research institutions and other important players, but it's fueled by talent. It's fueled by people. And Boston has an amazing ecosystem of people developers, right? So we talk about research institutions and educational institutions, and it's really important. But it's also about BC High and the high school level. We were talking right before this panel about the importance of high school for all of us on this panel. High schools continue to be an important platform or important sort of foundation for a lot of people that I talk to in their own development. So the work that BC High does then fuels into 29 colleges and universities in our city with 150,000 students from all over the world, right? Which is why there's now 34 angel and VC firms in the Boston area, right? Taking all of that sort of research capital and talent and then believing that in a place like Boston that wants to solve big problems, that there are some really good ideas here, which is why $5.1 billion was invested through VC investments in 2018, which is big, which is more than any other region outside of California in our country. We continue to receive, the most NIH funding. I think we've been receiving the most NIH funding for the last 24 consecutive years. And that's why in the Boston ecosystem there are 4,000, startups in Boston today. When you think about the city and what we do, we think we've got to create an opportunity to make sure that we're taking the best and the most of our ecosystem, which is making sure that there's access to the innovation economy, and that the diversity of our city, from age to race to gender to places in our city, can actually be activated to make sure that we're providing the most into this innovation ecosystem. So we've done things like making sure that in the IDB building, the Innovation and Design building in the Seaport continues to be a transformative hub for innovation with marine industrial firms, biotech labs, with the Boston Design Center being a place for amazing new companies to come into our city and find a place where they've got a really supportive hub. We've partnered with amazing, sort of partners like Mass Challenge, a nonprofit global accelerator program founded in Boston in 2009, dedicated to supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. It's amazing how they've also sort of decided that they're not going to take any equity position in these new companies. And so, today, over 10 years of impact, 2,458 startups that have accelerated through Mass Challenge, which equals more than 157,000 jobs, 3 billion in revenues generated, and the impact goes on. So the city of Boston, in making sure that Mass Challenge and others are supported, we've been a consumer of some of the tech and some of the innovation. So we work with Mass Challenge to make sure that they have a place where they can try the technology. And so the city of Boston, creating a place to land some of these ideas. And Mass Challenge then in turn partners with us to try to address some of Boston's biggest challenge: access to affordable healthcare, access to affordable housing, access to culturally competent healthcare, how we build credit better, how we access debt, right? And so we're really blessed to have those kind of partnerships. And then, like I said before, place matters, and it's not just about the Seaport. It's about the Roxbury Innovation Center in Nubian Square. The city helped to build that center and then partnered with Innovation Studio staff so we can carefully craft workshops to help entrepreneurs prepare for vigorous application processes in the vast numbers of accelerators throughout the city. So we see that as a real farming system for people all over the city from all types of backgrounds to get involved. And then lastly, the mayor created a startup manager role. And this role serves as a liaison between the mayor's office, the Office of Economic Development, and the innovation ecosystem to make sure that people, have the kind of guidance, and, entrepreneurs are given the kinds of sort of hands-on support on how to tap into internal and external resources. Boston's thriving because we're intentional in supporting this ecosystem.
That's amazing. John, for our students who are on the call today, where do they go to get information? Where's the hub for information systems for our students, and how would you advise them?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to look real quickly. There's a website with a bunch of stuff. It's called the Hub. I'm going to get that for you real quickly, Grace.
Great.
I would go to the city website and look for the Hub, where we've got a ton of information funneling into the great ecosystem we have. I'll provide that in a little bit.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Charbel, I read that Moderna developed the COVID vaccine before launching the clinical trial, which you talked about a little bit ago, and that was a wow. We all know most vaccines take years to develop. So innovation is, of course, a necessary ingredient ingredient in your industry to stay relevant so that you can continue to put out effective products. Can you talk about the process that led to such a fast turnaround for the vaccine and the process that you went through as a company?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this question, Grace. Some people, they were surprised. How can we develop a vaccine in such a record time, right? And we had to use also there was some flexibility from health agencies, right? And we also had to use some innovative thinking, right, and approaches and strategies in how we are developing this vaccine in a safe way, but also in a innovative and expedited way. Yeah. And I can give you one example from my own area, right? I mean, working in regulatory affairs. So, as I mentioned earlier, that we went straight from 2 days after the sequence was made available into the clinic in 42 days, right? Some people may wonder, but wait a minute, don't you have to do some animal testing, before you go into humans? Yeah, I mean, this is an important milestone, right, in drug development, right? We go do non-clinical testing, animal testing before we go into humans. And here, we had to use one of this innovation approaches, which is to say, look, we went to the health agency, said, look, we are, as I mentioned, we have this mRNA sequence inside of this fat bubble, this lipid nanoparticle. And we showed a lot of data, to let the agencies know that most of the toxicity that is seen in animals is driven by this fat bubble, by this lipid nanoparticle. And we had data on 6 different species, animal species, that showed that that the lipid nanoparticle that we're using is safe, has an acceptable safety profile, tox profile. So we showed the data to the health agencies, and they agreed with our thesis. They accepted that, and they allowed us to go straight into the clinic, without having to wait a year or so, to do these animal testing. So this is one way that we had to use, this innovation, to accelerate the development.
That's amazing.
Over.
Thank you. So, Jack, I want to shift just a little to talk about our mutual love of athletics and teamwork. And I want to talk a little bit about not everybody can hit a home run with every at-bat. So if you're an entrepreneur, there'll be some swings and misses. How does failure play a role in driving innovation? And maybe you could share something that maybe didn't work out in your life that made you even better and stronger.
Speaking of home runs, Grace, the home run king, Hank Aaron, sadly passed away a couple weeks, and the quote associated with his obituary was, "You can't have success without failure." And I have failed at every good thing I've ever tried, but I was just stupid enough to come back. And that's the difference. I don't like the word failure. Failure to me, it's just learning and getting better and iterating. Why don't we call it scrimmaging, iterating? If a kid is a musician who's going to go to great places, why don't we start working with him and her early? We do, but we don't on what they're going to do for the rest of their life. We have them do the same thing, and at 40, they're not happy, and it's a little late, and they're bound with a lot of commitments that a young person might not have. So I just, in here, let me put a finer point on it. To live the American dream, you don't have to hit a home run. You just need one broken bat single to change the world and change your life and change your family's life. And so, let's not talk failure. Let's talk getting better every day.
I love that. I love that because I talk about failure all the time, and I think it's a good thing. You get stronger, you're more resilient, and that's how we grow. Charbel and John, would you like to add anything to that question or comment?
Grace, I only want to say that my son and I were watching Batman, and there's a great line in Batman. I forget which version, but Bruce Wayne, as a kid, falls down a well or something, and his father comes and saves him, and he says, "Bruce, why do we fall?" And Bruce answers automatically, to learn how to get back up, right? And so whenever my son makes a mistake or he comes crying because he might have done poorly in an exam, I say, John, why do we fall? And he looks at me. Sometimes he begrudgingly says to learn how to get back up, right? But that's what failure is all about. It's got to be a learning opportunity. And Jack's right on, right? We've got to teach how we learn from our mistakes, so how we learn from trying the best we can, but just not getting there, right? And so I think this is something that's really important, and we got to do a better job around.
I would agree.
Great.
Charbel, did you want to?
Yeah. So Jack hit 2 home runs. No, he said a couple of 2 points that resonated also with me. One, that innovation is a team sport. Yeah, we need to have this collaboration to advance the thinking, right? So this is one, and the other one is learning from our failures, right? I mean, we have to be relentless, especially look, and as this was discussed earlier. Innovation can be incremental, like when you improve, do some improvement on your product or services, or it can be disruptive, right? Like introducing a new business model like Uber or Airbnb, or in this case, this mRNA technology, right? Modality. And the risks, I mean, we had only in terms of the risks were very high that this technology would not work. Yeah, when Stéphane Bancel, by the way, who is a Jesuit, who studied not a Jesuit, he studied in a Jesuit school. It was, everybody was against him, right? There were no regulatory frameworks. There were everybody pointed to the failures, and that that this technology cannot be delivered to the cells. Yeah, this is why we had to put it inside this LNP, this lipid nanoparticles. But he learned. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we learned from our failures, right? So this is really important, and this is why, I mean, this is for you, Grace, and BC High, and I really admire this man for others and the leadership that you're trying to teach, to the students, is that you need leadership. Yeah, you need to be relentless and drive when you have a vision, to drive through the failures and to continue driving towards your goal and your dream.
I love that, Charbel. Here at BC High, we do spend a lot of time reflecting on all that we do. It's very Ignatian, and our students, come to BC High expecting to be a certain person, or they've got to figure it out in 7th grade what they're going to be. And I think the beauty that we see with our faculty and staff and our students is their openness to growth and willingness to try something new. Or if they didn't make the team that they hoped to, they're in the play, or they're doing robotics, or they're doing the St. Louis project. So we try to really help our students to look at their growth, their opportunities for growth here, and to try new things. And I think that's very innovative as a part of our school and our culture. So I always go back to my father, and his thing was strength and resolve. It's not the crisis, but how you handle the crisis. And that's how I've lived my life. And I try to reflect that with our kids. So thank you all for sharing those opportunities for innovation. And we all realize you're never too old to get up and innovate and start again. So thank you. John, you're aware of BC High's role in helping the Point Partners. And for those on the call who don't know Point Partners, it's a group of partners in the area, developers, educational institutions, the Boys and Girls Club, and many partners around, who come together monthly to talk about what does Columbia Point look like, and how can we work together to make this the greatest place in Boston. And we're trying to establish a vision and development for Columbia Point. So in planning for a city, John, how do you see innovation coming to Columbia Point? And what innovative thinking do you see coming out of Columbia Point?
Grace, great question. And I'm going to get to it, but first, you raised your father, and I just have to make a comment. Charbel said the importance of fighting through something and being persistent and pushing through. I mean, there was nobody tougher on me than your father, and as a coach. But man, he taught me persistence. And it was tough love, right? He was supportive, but at the same time, he wanted to make sure we understood the basics, and his thing was about doing things right and continuing to push through. And so just wanted to acknowledge his legacy in my life and in the life of many BC High young men. And that's the kind of coaching and the kind of sort of development we all need in the innovation space, right? To kind of continue to push through. I also want to say you asked the question of where BC High students can find more information, and the Start Hub is what I was thinking about. Just couldn't think about it. The starthub.org is a portal to our innovation community online, and so it's start START hub.org. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned what's happening at BC High, and it's important that we recognize, important collaborations like Point Partners, right? Establishing a vision for how Columbia Point develops. I mean, that's how planning is done well, right? And that's why, in the Columbia Point, in Dorchester Bay area, Accordia Partners right now has proposed to develop, I think, 20 acres at the former Bayside Expo Center site, which is a huge site, on Mount Vernon Street. It's approximately, I think on Morrissey Boulevard, 13 acres of land, right? The proposed project is bringing in, 5.9 million of new mixed-use development, which includes, over 1,700 residential units and a ton of retail restaurant space, 4 million square feet of office space. I mean, that's just amazing for the Columbia Point area. And vision matters, right? Collaborative vision matters, and that's what's happening there to sustain not only sort of you know housing and commercial space, but the public realm, right? 20 acres of new space that's going to include publicly accessible open space, right, and some new street work and some new bike and pedestrian accommodations and lanes. Really exciting. And then right across street from BC High, because of that work, in 2017, Norblum purchased the old Globe site, right? Over 600,000 square feet building, 16 acres of land, right? And that's planned to be an amazing space, right? I think they've renamed it the BEAT, Boston Exchange for Accelerated Technology, right? And it's a play clearly on the Globe history there. That's an amazing space for BC High to think about how our students now walking out of school thinks about what's happening in the future and sort of this really sort of mixed use location. But the point is not far away from the other parts of the city that's really humming. I do want to call out the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic, and people all around the country are trying to pick who the cities are that are going to win and lose out of this pandemic. Who are the folks who are going to come out strong? And I'm excited because Amazon doubled down. I mean, you talked about the 5,000 jobs they're bringing to the city. Well, just recently, Amazon announced, in fact, that 3,000 of the 5,000 was a recent decision to expand into the seaport. And for BC High students, for students all over the place, that's 3,000 new jobs, making up the 5,000 total of Alexa voice recognition work. It's big data, AWS. It's Amazon Pharmacy and what's happening in the continue to happen in the life science tech. That's all really exciting, and because of those things like the Beat in Amazon, once again we're able to have the community benefits roll out, right? So I know the Amazon project is providing a dog park, and is also going to provide 2 new performing arts venues, one for 500 seats and another one for 100 seat black box theater. Those kind of benefits come with development when you have partnership and vision. So I just want to applaud BC High for being part of the work in Columbia Point and continuing to push our city forward.
Thanks, John. We work really closely with all of the institutions on the point, as well as the developers in the area. And, we're thinking about infrastructure, we're thinking about K-Circle, and just trying to think how we can be partners to the city. And I think that's very important so that we have a vision for the future of all of our institutions. So thanks for sharing all of that. We have some number of questions that have come in from our audience. So we'll take a few now. And this could be for any of you who want to answer. What has COVID-19 taught us about innovation for education, business, and development?
Yeah, great question. I'll take a quick stab at. we've seen that in the 2007 2009 recession, that Boston had some resilience, right? That there's a part of our economy. We talk about the eds, the meds, and health. There's a part of our economy that is super resilient, and a big part of that is in our innovation ecosystem, right? The educational institutions in our city, the health institution in our city, and so if anything, we continue to see, even as people are worried about real estate and the urban landscape and where we're going, the labs are taking off right now in our city and anchoring some of the real estate development and investment we're seeing. As we sort of, so talk about what's going to happen post, the pandemic. Amazon announces, another space in our city, and is so innovation and innovation ecosystem continues to make us, resilient. And I think Boston is in a good place to come out of COVID-19 strong because of it.
Yeah. It's a great question from an AP economics student. How do you balance being a strong leader and working as a team, as previously mentioned? Jack, why don't I turn that one to you?
Sure. What I tell you is that if you don't have you're not going to have any economics if you don't have a great team. It's not going to go well. And so, being a strong leader, you have to protect your culture at all costs. We haven't talked about culture, but you have to protect culture, which is really a team. If you've ever been part of a great team or a group, they have that culture, and that's what I've been chasing ever since. I had it with, as John said, with your father. He taught you to be accountable. He was a tough man, but he's a kind man. He taught, it was just a lot of lessons there I'm using today. But honestly, guys, culture and drive and the people, that's where you win. The leaders are, that the credit that a founder or leader gets is overweighted. The real kudos belong to the ones that have imagination, drive, grit, and they just don't quit, and they're dogged.
Thanks, Jack. Charbel, you don't seem to have a Boston accent, one of our students says. How did you happen to come to Boston and find BC High for your son?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize it was that obvious. We were living in France before coming here. Yeah, I was working at Novartis in Switzerland, but we're living across the border in France. Yeah, and we decided it was time for us to go back to the States because this is where the grandparents they live, right? And our children, they wanted to give them an identity, right? And they were Americans, right? So we decided to go back to the US, and we looked. Shall we go back to New Jersey? Yeah, where they have all the pharma companies, or shall we go back to Boston? And what John described earlier, and Jack, right? This is what attracted us to come back to the Boston area because of all the thriving biotech industry. So this is why we came back, and then we settled initially in Milton because Milton had a French immersion program, right? But then for high school, we went to start to visit some schools in the neighborhood, in the area. And the first moment we walked into BC High, Jean-Paul and I, we fell in love with the school. And it was a clear decision to join BC High.
Well, we're glad you chose BC High. Thank you.
Of course.
Let's pivot just a bit to talk about our future generation. And I have a question here from one of our students, but I want to give it a little bit of context and the very reason why the Shield Center for Innovation was created. So what kind of difference does helping a teenager start thinking in an innovative way make as opposed to starting that thinking as an adult? And one of our students asked the question, what words of wisdom would you give to BC High students on how to get involved with innovation economy during their high school years? And why don't I turn this to Jack?
So on the question, we're going to map that for you. Part of the mandate for the center is to map it for everyone in Boston, for those bright, young, talented kids, so that they find the connective tissue that leads them to the door that they want so that they can start. My advice is just start. Some guy said that imagination is more important than knowledge, and that may rankle some people, but you can attain knowledge by just grit and determination when you need it. That guy, by the way, it was Albert Einstein. He kind of not bad. And another guy that's relevant, Jonas Salk, that created the polio vaccine. What was his quote? Intuition teaches the educated man where to look next. So, we don't teach intuition. We don't teach imagination. Maybe we do. I'm an old guy, so maybe you do it. Everyone does it now, but I don't think we do it enough. So our wisdom for you, BCI, we're going to do that for all the kids of Boston to give the connective tissue so you'll find the door, so you don't have to stumble around like a dope like me around the city.
John or Chevelle?
All right, Sherelle, I'll jump in here. So I do think that, I also want to sort of advise people to take a look at social innovation, right? So innovation, don't just think about innovation and like, I've got to figure out how to go make money. Think about solving problems, right? And sometimes it's think about what's happening at BC High, right? Your own experience at BC High. Maybe an app comes out of that. Maybe it's a different process. But I think innovation is an opportunity to solve something around you. And I love Jack's piece about working with a team to do it, right? First, the center mapping it is brilliant. Second, if you can work with some other folks at BC High, some other students, right, or a teacher to help solve a problem at BC High, what an amazing way to get started.
Thanks. Charbel, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just a couple of words. Be curious, and learn about things that are not necessarily in what in your curriculum. So to develop this muscle, to build the muscle of thinking outside the box. And the other one we touched on, don't be afraid to experiment, and make mistakes and try again.
Thank you. I'd love for you, Jack and John, to talk about the BC High Alumni Network and how those relationships have held for you, and how you leverage that network, and especially for our students and young alumni on the call today. And we have some future students, some incoming students who have just been accepted. But tell us about the 15,000 strong and how that has been a support system for you.
I'll start off. I mean, I didn't want to go to BCI. My mother, tough lady from Brockton, made me go. And she said, Jack, you'll know everyone in the state. She was absolutely right. I was a year in the BCI. The governor, I ran the House, the Senate, and all the leadership around Boston were BC High alums. Then as I grew, I found BCI alums everywhere, and they would take the meeting. Why would they take the meeting? They know that you're going to be accountable. You follow through on the commitments that you said you would, and that's important. Not many. That's not as common as you might think. And so, that network, I would say I am 100, as certain as I'm sitting here, is far better. Sorry, guys, Harvard, BC, you name it. It's a better network in Boston by far than those. And it's the most helpful network too. And I'm telling you, it's powerful. My mother understated it, if anything. And so thank you.
It's beautiful. John?
Yeah, no, I think Jack really said it all. And so ditto to that. The BC High alum that I find in government and public service have been, sort of really, a helpful network to continue to build on the framing that BC High provides about helping others. And, I had some folks who were really proud of the fact that this was launching today, Jack. So I had some alum call me, say, hey, I hear you're part of this inaugural panel. Sounds great. I'm logging in. I'm registering, right? And we've got a lot of BC High alum, listening to us here and really excited and proud about what we're doing. And so, there were a couple of different problems that I needed someone to work with in government to solve. And building trust is not something that happens automatic. But there's something about, Jack, being able to call an alum and knowing you guys have a shared experience and say, look, we need to work together on this. This might be politically thorny. This might be a challenge, might have some controversy. right? And then be able to do it. I'll call a couple of people out. Michael Flaherty and I. Michael Flaherty is a citywide counselor on the Boston City Council. Michael and I have done a lot of work together, but usually it starts with, how's BC High? Have you been there recently? What's going on? And we just kind of remind ourselves about our past and our commonality before we start on the problem solving. And it makes a whole lot of difference when you're trying to do something together that you have a common past.
It's beautiful. Thank you. There's an audience question from our students. How can BC High and the Shield Center engage other schools in the Boston area in ways that encourage innovative thinking and collaboration of new ideas? I put that out to all three of you if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, Grace, you're already showing, I'll take a stab, you're already showing great leadership. On March 4th, we're bringing, Harvard, BC, Northeastern, and Babson in to try to work on a curriculum that can really help kids earlier. And so I think it's a beautiful way. I mean, we don't have the answers, but we're going to find out, and we're going to start early. And it's kind of relatively new terrain. So I'm excited about that. And can I throw out one last thing? One of my classmates is one of the top venture people, has been for 35 years, out of Cambridge. She's a classmate. He told me last week that he does tech. All right. So not health, it's a little healthcare, but tech. He said, the average CEO that he funds with a check size of anywhere from 5 to 15 million is 27 years old. We got to get going faster, guys. I mean, this is not, you can't wait for 40, 27. He funded last week a 17-year-old that he's high on. That 17, he had to beg him to graduate from high school. He's turning down Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, did not want to finish high school. That is a jockey. That is a talent. And it's just a case of why, if they were gifted, do we make them wait? Yeah.
That's great. Great. For our last question, I just want to ask for our young people watching, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give as it pertains to innovation? And Jack, you just kind of summed it up, but if anyone else has something to offer our boys, that would be great.
I think the one thing I'd add here is exploring outside of your norm, right? Being able to, travel is a way to do it, and kind of going and exploring a new culture, a new way of looking at things. Sometimes we approach problems with the same angle and same perspective, and you need to take different perspectives. Language oftentimes helps us with that, and studying foreign language. But then there's a lot of diversity in our city. And exploring some of that diversity, meeting people that you haven't met before, trying to figure out their background, their experiences, and how they approach things or how they look at things is something that could be really powerful as you're looking at problems in the world and trying to solve them. So diversity is something I want to lean in on as a last answer to that question.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. So just one thought is build your idea in the future. Right? Have roots for your idea, for your goal in the future, and work backwards. Instead of trying to build on an idea now and trying to do these incremental changes. And don't give up if you fail, like we talked about this. And take risks. Thank you.
Jack, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, it's great that we're doing it, and I just encourage all the kids at BCI, just go to the deep end of the pool, jump in, and start iterating. I think and don't listen to the critic. The critic's going to encourage you not to do it. Know why? They're afraid to do it themselves. They're afraid you'll succeed and you'll be a mirror to them. So don't listen to the critics, because you don't want as Teddy Roosevelt said, you don't want your soul resting with those cold-hearted critics that know neither victory nor defeat. So just do it. And we're going to try to help you, get the courage to jump in the deep end of the pool, because you will get benefits and you'll better understand yourself. It'll be awesome. Trust me. Call me if it isn't.
Well, I want to take this moment to thank Jack, John and Charbel for their comments and their wisdom today, for their participation, for helping us think outside the box. As we've all gone through the pandemic, we've all learned. I know here at BC High, we've really stretched ourselves. I want to thank our faculty and staff for all that they've done to have a hybrid model, to be in school, to have the boys on campus, and to pivot the way we have pivoted here at BC High. And we're really proud of the work of all of our community coming together and being supportive. And as educators, we're faced with the difficult decision is, how do we prepare our students for a world they don't even know exists, or a job that hasn't even been created or thought of yet? And I'd like to ask the boys to think about that who are on the call, to, as Jack said, jump into the deep end and take a risk. And it's not always easy to take risks when there's so much pressure put on you, but we're here to support you. So the key today, as we've heard, is innovation and innovative thinking. But how do you educate the next generation of innovators? So what I'm excited about is we'll discuss that next month during our next panel discussion on March 4th, which will be moderated by Jane Swift. And we'll be joined by representatives from Harvard, Boston College, Babson, and Northeastern. And the topic will be how innovation can be taught. And what I'm really excited about the Shield Center is that Jack has really pushed us to really honor our curriculum and look at what we are doing very well, but also to think about the areas that we could grow and areas that we might think about, whether it's a summer program or opportunities for partnerships with other schools and other existing curriculum. So I want to thank Jack for his wisdom, for his generosity. And in the meantime, I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you are safe, stay well, and join us next month. Thanks so much.